Hello and welcome to the 2018 version of Conversations with the Mayor from the beach during the Revere Beach International Sand Sculpting Festival, the 15th, as a matter of fact.
15th annual,
yeah.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, it's interesting is not only the 15th annual, but there are going to be 15 sculptors this year, yeah? Yeah, and I guess we're waiting for some interesting weather to come in this afternoon. We may see Dorothy on her bicycle go by in the air at some point in time, followed by the Wicked Witch of the West. We'll see how that works out, but we got the sands of the Kalahari down the beach going. The wind is blowing unbelievable. We've got people holding down the tent, so it's going to be interesting. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Ed.
It's always a pleasure, and it's always great to sit down at this location, you know. I enjoy the times that we do get together and talk.
Absolutely.
And certainly need to do more of them. And as we were talking about earlier, we'll have to pick out some interesting locations as well besides the beach.
Go on location, right? I mean, we have the beach obviously is a great scene, and this week is a fun week for the city and really for the entire region, because we have, you know, close to 1 million people that come down to check out the beach, and there's no better way to celebrate all that we have here in the city than to have an event like this.
Yeah, right from the very first one, you could tell this was something special, and it brought a whole different, you know, vision, look, whatever, to Revere Beach and Revere in particular. So it's a great event.
And I think what's exciting about it is it's a different vision, but it's also a little bit of the past, right? You look at those old pictures. I've seen those old pictures of the beach packed with people, and to see the newer, updated version of the beach packed with people, and for a different venue and a different event is really kind of cool to see, you know, what the beach was, you know, 100 years ago, what it is today, and how similar and dissimilar it is, right?
It is.
And it's exciting.
Speaking of similarities and looking at all the sculptors, the 15 years and the number of years that you've been involved, but let's look from last year to this year. Anything different this year from a city's perspective with the Sand Sculpting Festival?
So this year, the city had the opportunity to appropriate a little bit more money for the Sand Sculpting Festival, which, with the support of the City Council, of course, is important. I think we all recognize that this is an important and valuable event in the city, and one that we want to make sure is done to the best of its ability. And each year, the partnership outdoes itself, and the Revere Beach Partnership is really has had that vision of making this beach and really the region a really active place, and to be able to support that from the city's perspective, to be able to support that with additional funds is exciting, and we look forward to that continued partnership, and we are also seeing, I think what's cool is seeing the additional numbers of sponsors that have come out. We've had, you know, great partnerships and relationships with people. HYM Investments, for example, who's going forward with Suffolk Downs, the Suffolk Downs redevelopment. They've stepped up as an important partner and an important sponsor here, and the city having those kind of partnerships really makes events like this a lot easier to put on, and makes it a fun week.
And it's so important to being able to bring this off, because I mean, it costs money to make this happen. I was on the partnership for a few years there, and I know how hard they work to raise money, and not only that, but the planning that goes into this, and the time and the effort that everybody spends. So kudos to everybody on the Revere Beach Partnership for the amount of work they do before, during, and after.
Right, yeah, and to pull it off, and to have 1 million people come down to the beach and have it go off flawlessly, and have it go off and be an event that people look forward to, and people not only in the city look forward to, but I know my counterparts in other cities, my mayors in other cities always are excited about it, and they say, oh, I can't wait to get down to your city, and it's a great showcase, right? It's a great showcase for the city, it's a great showcase for the partnership, and they do a great job, and we're very lucky to have them.
And we will probably have many more showcases coming forward.
Yes.
Moving on to some of the subjects that we talked about for conversation today, I think let's start off with the budget. I think the City Council about a week or so approved a $192.6 million budget, and talk a little bit about what the budget contains and so forth.
Yeah, so we proposed a budget to the City Council that overall, so you mentioned 192, but I think total of all the expenses that it takes to run the city, it's about $206 million. The increase was a little bit less than a 1.5% increase, which is really, in line with what we want to do. but it also includes strategic investments that we know are important. So we included a number of new positions in departments that need them, right? So DPW, we know, has been short-staffed for a long time and neglected it for a long time. We've got five or six additional positions in DPW. We've made sure that we've included additional positions in both police and fire. So we have more police officers that are going to be hired and more firefighters to be hired. I know that a city growing the way that the city of Revere is growing, we need to provide additional resources and additional services to our residents. And that means more bodies, right? And so to be in the position to be able to add to our DPW, to our police and fire, is really important in terms of being able to provide a level of service that I am proud of.
Yeah. And to that point, in the level of services, we were, the Beachmont Improvement Committee a few weeks ago met with Alan Fitzmaurice and Priscilla Nickerson,
Right.
who, fantastic jobs. I think Priscilla is fairly new.
Priscilla is
in her
fairly
position,
new. She's a new addition, part-time addition out of my office, and we're excited about her being really a liaison between my office and City Hall with groups like the Beachmont Improvement Committee, like the Revere Beautification Committee, like the partnership even, just to have that kind of level of a person to go to on certain issues. And we're excited about Priscilla, and obviously Revere 311. I'm rocking the shirt today. Alan Fitzmaurice, Randall in 311, and of course Ruben Cantor, who's the director of 311. They have done a fantastic job. They've quickly established themselves as a critical service to our residents, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. And we know that we could always do a little bit better job, but to have that level of customer service and kind of feedback for our residents is really important.
Well, in many respects, I think, going back to the quality of life and services within the city, I mean, adding to the DPW to get things done, but more importantly, it's getting information to them about what needs to be done. And in the past, it was either emailing yourself or calling your city councilor, not that people don't do that now or shouldn't. But now you've got an additional resource to try and funnel and get things done through, and that can only be better.
Right, and really, we want people to still have interactions with myself, with the council, with other folks in the city, but the idea and the real vision behind 311 is that they follow up, right? So they're making sure that nobody can point the finger at someone else and say, oh no, you got to go talk to this person, you got to go talk to that person. This is the one call that you can make to make sure you get an answer, to make sure it's accurate, and make sure it's courteous, right? So that you're getting a level of customer service that you may not get if you call somebody who just picks up a phone in City Hall. So to be able to have that follow-up and to be able to track things as we go forward and to know exactly how many potholes we filled in a week or a month or a year, to know exactly how many trash pickups we had and how many we may have missed, how many calls we got for a missed trash pickup. Those are important pieces of information that I need to be able to run the city appropriately and correctly.
Any other major component of the budget that you want to highlight?
Yeah, so there was one other thing that we've talked about, and we may talk about a little bit more in terms of sanitation, but we created basically a trash and recycling enterprise fund, and this allows the city to create or to actually to buy uniform trash barrels for our residents. And so some other communities have a similar program where they provide a barrel to the residents, one per unit. And the idea behind it is to make sure that as we deal with rodent issues and as we deal with sanitation issues, that if we're providing barrels to our residents and providing a uniform barrel that is of high quality and has a top lid that we know can be shut, we can that's really the first step in terms of dealing with sanitation and rodent issues, is sanitation.
Yeah,
So,
and I know that was a facet to the whole thing with the rodent sanitation, and I did want to talk a little bit about that. Before we leave the budget, and if we have other things on the budget, please say it. I did have one question relative to one of the questions you hear a lot is, okay, we've got a lot of development going on within the city. We're expecting a lot of additional revenue coming from that development. And tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, at this point in time, in terms of development, other than licensing fees and stuff like that, we're not yet, or haven't yet, started to realize the benefit of all that development. Is that true?
That's correct.
And when would we expect to see that?
So we'll see additional new growth next year. And we just kind of did the budget for fiscal 19. So fiscal 20, we'll see some additional growth, and that will include, the additional revenue from buildings like the beach house and probably from the Shaw site. Now, if you look down the beach on Ocean Ave, we have some cranes that are building another building as part of the Waterfront Square project. Those revenues will come in probably in fiscal 21. And then we have 8 hotels that have been proposed or in different permitting phases. When those buildings open up and they are operating, we'll have room tax and meal tax from those buildings. And then all of that doesn't include the transformational development at Suffolk Downs. And so the development at Suffolk Downs hopefully will start producing some revenue for the city by fiscal 21, 22. So in the future years, we're in good shape.
So starting in 20, we'll start.
And we'll start to see some of that additional revenue. And it's really exciting because it gives us that additional revenue gives us the opportunity to do some great things for our residents and provide things like the senior tax exemption that we've recently rolled out, and we have a lot of seniors who have come in to apply for. That's a 10% residential tax exemption for our seniors that they voted on in November.
Yes.
So we get to do things like that. We get to provide water and sewer rate relief, which we did this year by cutting the rate 3% for our residents. Those are the things that happen when we have additional revenue that comes into the city. So there are great things happening, and we're looking forward to even more revenue and more opportunities to provide resources and services to the city.
And staying on the budget for a little bit before we leave it, is the other thing that people ask about and want to know more about is police and fire. What's happening in that arena in terms of additional policemen or firemen, and secondly, in terms of schools, in terms of the budget.
Yeah, so with police and fire, we added 4 new firefighters this year, and we're hopeful that we'll get a SAFE grant, which is some grant money that helps the city pay for a portion of those new firefighters. On the police side, we added 3 new police officers, so we're up to 103, a complement of 103 that we're budgeted for. And so we recently had a report done of our department, organizational review of the department.
Yes.
A lot of the recommendations that were in that were included in our budget. We've changed some of the scheduling, we've changed some of the internal management of the department, and the additional bodies are really an important piece of that. And we're going to continue, in the next couple of years, we're going to be looking to add even more. With police and fire, it's interesting because it's not just you pull somebody off the street and you say, okay, you're a police officer now. The amount of time and effort and money that it takes to train somebody to become a police officer, really, it may take a year before you get that person up and in. So when we budget for somebody, and you may have a couple of retirements between that time. So there's always kind of a fluidity to hiring and to staffing in our public safety departments, but it's important to have additional bodies, certainly.
Yeah, and going back to development-related revenues and stuff like that, and the budget, I would assume that as developments continue, when you look at the HYM development at Suffolk Downs and so forth, there's going to be more needs for more police, and if I remember right from the last meeting, that was also factored into some of what they're doing. And
right, and some of the the revenue that they're going to produce ultimately is pretty significant.
Yeah.
So we'll be in a position to be able to make sure that we can provide services to the entire city, and even if it is a development like Suffolk Downs. To go back, you mentioned the schools.
Schools, yes.
and I don't know if you meant it in terms of public safety, but the school department, we had some, there was an additional amount that was provided to them. We also are excited about, I'm excited about the governor earmarking an amount of money, several hundred million dollars, I think 150 or 200 million dollars for school safety and partnering with communities to make sure that we can provide a level of comfort and a level of protection to our students. And that's one thing that the superintendent and I have had a lot of conversations about. How do we make sure that our school resource officers are doing what they need to do? How do we make sure they have the everything that they need to be successful? And how do we, if we need to add more bodies in that, in our school resource officers? I'm excited that the governor has acknowledged this as a priority, and we're going to be working to make sure we get some of that money.
And of course, another subject that keeps coming up when schools is a new high school. So obviously, I won't say obviously, but my perspective is that that's not part of the budget this year. It may be part of some future budget, but is there anything in there, and what are the plans relative to budgets and so forth going forward?
So we have to wait for the approval from the state to say that we got the green light. Right? So once we get the green light from the state, and actually there was a report that the state Department of Early and Secondary Education had provided, and it says it calls out the fact that we need a new high school. So we've put that statement of interest in. We put it again this year. We're hopeful that we'll hear. Usually we hear in end of November, early December. We're hopeful that we'll have some good news and maybe an early Christmas gift.
Oh, there you go.
But once we get the green light from them that they acknowledge that we need a new high school, we can start the real. There are going to be a couple of years of planning that go into building a new high school. So it's not like we're going to get the green light and tomorrow we're going to be bonding money for it. We're going to have to plan out, and we've had a number of conversations with the school committee and the superintendent about where does the high school go, how do we pay for it, and so those are things that we're working on in the meantime, so that when we do hear from the state and we do get the green light, we're ready to go and we can start planning and go forward as soon as possible.
Probably do a whole show on budget, and I'll do my best, Columbo. One more question before we leave that. Parks and Recreation, because I got to assume, and I know you've been doing a lot of work in that area. I attended the meeting on the 5-year plan and all of that, and I'm assuming a portion of your budget plan included things for Parks and Recreation.
So we've been able to have some additional activities out of our Parks and Recreation department. We've hired John Leone to help out with some of the sports programming that we do, and we have a great team. Mike Hinojosa, Charlie Jafrida, Sally, Miss Sally, they all do a fantastic job. They provide a level of service, and I call it the fun department. And I told them, and from the mayor's office and from my perspective, there's critical departments, right? You have police, fire, DPW, or just really those are the meat and potatoes of what we do in a municipality. The recreation department really does a great job of making the city and making the residents of the city feel like a real community. And to have events like the Movies on the Beach, and to have events like the Fall Festival, and to pull things together like Touch a Truck, and just all these great events, they do so much, and they do such a great job of reaching out to the community and getting people to feel a little bit of pride about where they live. It's exciting, and so we've been able to support them and give them the resources that they need to do their job well, and they've done a fantastic job.
And I have to say, on a personal note, one of my daughters just moved back from Plymouth recently, and her daughter's 12 years old, and my grandson that lives across the street from me is 12 years old. They and my other grandson came down the beach, and they were having a ball at the Movies on the Beach. Last
Jaws
week.
Was a lot of fun. Jaws is a great one.
That's always a good one to start the summer off with. So, anything else on the budget?
I think that's it. I think we've.
So rat infestation, and we need to, and the public safety, health, if you will, related to that. I believe it was $150,000 that was allocated. Did that include the barrels?
That does not include the barrels. Okay. So we dedicated $150,000 50 of that is in our water and sewer fund, so that we can make sure that we're baiting and we're doing a good job when we're opening up our utilities, that we're kind of dealing with any rodent issues that we may have. So there's 50,000 there, and then I believe 100,000 in our general fund, and that would basically be for the extension of a pilot program that we started towards the end of June, which was where, and residents may have seen folks from extermination companies out on the street. They actually went out and canvassed and let people know that they could sign a waiver. And I went on RevereTV and told people about this. We basically had 4 vendors that came out, and we worked with them, and they were able to go out to residents' homes and do some extermination. And so what we wanted to do was pilot, kind of get 4 companies in, see how far that money went, and see how well kind of it worked, and then we can pilot out and kind of continue on with that 100,000 that was in our general fund.
So part of what you mentioned earlier was the trash barrel, replacement of trash barrels throughout the city, and that was a separate funding, if you will, that took place within the budget, if I heard you right. So people will be replacing trash barrels. People who have existing barrels, what happens to those?
So we're going to be doing a lot more communication. We still haven't even signed the contract with the barrel company yet, so we still have a little bit of work to do, but there'll be a lot more communication about the program. The goal is to get a barrel in every unit, in the hands of every unit, and those barrels would be used for trash disposal. I know that I myself have 2 barrels, and so there may be some conversation about, well, what do I need? I'm a family of 4. What if you need an additional barrel? There will be an opportunity for residents to be able to purchase an additional barrel, but the first barrel is going to be free. The first barrel is going to be a 65-gallon barrel, which is a pretty big size. So we have some details to work out, and we may have some programs for the folks that do have a barrel that they're using, that say, if they say, hey, what do I do? I just bought this barrel
that
yesterday.
Meets the standard,
what am I going to do with my barrel? We want to figure out something. I'm not looking to really attack people and to get after them, but I want to make sure that we have a quality of barrels, that every resident has a quality level of barrel, that we don't see trash all over the place, and we don't see these pictures that I've seen of trash kind of strewn about on the street. That if we give residents a barrel and we say, you need to use this, and if you don't use it, you're going to have to, or something similar, that you're going to have a problem. I think that's going to go a long way in terms of our sanitation issues that we have.
All right, moving on to our other subject that we had for today was discussion about the development, in particular the development at Suffolk Downs. And having been at the Development Advisory Group meetings and following that for quite a while, I'm anxious and excited to see as it's moving on. Please.
Right. Yeah, no, so we've had 3 meetings so far of the Suffolk Downs Advisory Group, and they've been very informative. In my opinion, they've been public. They've been open to the public and televised, and we want to make sure that there's a level of transparency with some of the development plans that are going on. And I thought it was important to have a kind of a citizen or resident advisory group that could really drive some of the questions that folks may have about the project. And I think what's exciting is that regardless of Amazon, which is still kind of in play at this point, regardless of Amazon, that development at Suffolk Downs is going to be transformational. I think the more that the residents see of what the plans are and what the vision is, the more interested and excited people will get. And I think when we see what's happening in the region, and you see how much attention Boston gets and how much business is booming in the region, that Suffolk Downs is going to be that transformational development that is going to kind of lead us into the next few decades. And it's an incredible opportunity, and I've had a lot of conversations with Tom O'Brien at HYM and with the members of the advisory group, and with really anyone, about how how exciting a development like that is, and the opportunities that it provides, and how we have. I talked a lot about early on about building an economy, and to have an entrepreneurial center, to have shared workspace, and to have the idea of commercial tax base to be generated out of that site is just it's really incredible. And I think that the conversations have been really have been helpful for the city and for everyone involved to understand exactly what the concerns are of the residents and the neighbors and the city as a whole, and kind of some of the ways that we can make this development really work for the city and make it authentic to the city.
And I think your term transformational, I've used that a number of times in conversations I've had with people. It is truly transformational. And two comments and observations, I guess, on my part from my involvement up to date is, number one, is that Tom O'Brien, the developers, I can't say enough about how open and accessible these guys have been. And even more importantly, the level of detail and study that they've gone into, that budget presentation that they did at the last meeting, and the thought that went into identifying what the costs are and what the revenue coming in from that project, kind of puts it all in perspective to understand the benefit of such a project.
Right. Right. And I think that opened a lot of people's eyes, and that's why to dig into that level of detail and to have, I'm really lucky to have residents and people that are involved in the city who are willing to dive into those details and care about it that much, and that shows the strength of our community is the fact that these people, the people who are on our advisory group and so many people in the community want to dive into those details and want to understand what this means for the city. And when you really look, everyone says the devil's in the details. When you start diving into those details, it really opens your eyes to the opportunity and the potential. And when we talk about providing additional services to the city, when we talk about building a new high school, when we talk about all the things that we need to do to be a cutting edge, exciting community in a place that people want to live, Suffolk Downs is going to be a big piece of that for our future.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny. I remember my mother and my mother-in-law, unfortunately, who recently passed away this year, but they used to talk about the casino. Will I ever see the casino in my lifetime? Now I'm getting to near their age, and I'm going, I hope to see the end of this development in my lifetime. Yeah, but it is an exciting, transformational event that's taken place, and I'm really looking forward to see it, develop.
No, we're all looking forward to it, and we're really excited, and it's just a great thing for the future of the city. And I've talked a lot about there's an importance to know what's happening in the next 6 months or year or 2 years, but there's really a lot of value in thinking about 10, 15, 20 years out, and Suffolk Downs having that vision for a longer term, and having residents who understand that vision and who share that vision, and to have a developer who understands that vision and has a similar vision is really important.
And more importantly, we talked about the development advisory group. There is the PUD committee,
right? So
which is working on the, I'll say, for lack of a better word, legislation that'll actually go to the council for approval of the work to be done.
Right,
correct?
And so that's in our city ordinances. We have set up kind of an internal group, and that includes folks like the fire chief and DPW director and folks from my office to work on the building department and sexual services to work on some of the more the details of the ordinances and how it's going to work and what the process will be. And so they've been working kind of in tandem with the advisory group, and they've helped inform each other, which is good. And Frank Stringy sits on both the advisory group and the PUD group, and there's a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of commitment that's been
And so basically,
made.
as I understand it, and just so to put it in perspective for everybody else, I hope, it's that the advisory group is kind of informing the PUD. The PUD is then taking the devil in the details, working on together all the details that are then going to go before the city council, which will ultimately approve the work that's going to be done.
Right.
At what point in time, that first phase that's going to take place 1 to 3 years, will that happen?
Yeah, so we're hopeful to go before the city council as soon as the advisory group kind of wraps up, which we're planning for the end of the summer to be,
Okay.
it was kind of an intense summer plan of like having the advisory group work through a lot of the issues. I think the next meeting is going to be about traffic, and
Yes.
that may be one that,
I'm looking forward to
that
that
spills
one.
over, and maybe a conversation that continues, hopefully not too long, but it may take more than one meeting to get to work through some of the traffic issues, and that's an important one. So we need to take the time to make that a priority and make sure that we're covered on that.
Yeah.
But the goal was to hopefully wrap up in the summer and maybe in the fall be able to go to the council and have some conversations, and knowing that the council is going to do their due diligence and go through it with a fine-tooth comb and really dig into the details, and hopefully sometime this year we'll have approvals from the
Well,
city
that helps
council.
put the timetable into perspective for people, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the stables are coming down in October.
If things go as kind of planned, that would be kind of the first step.
Well, another informative session, and it's been great, as always, to sit here and talk with you. But before we close out, because if I remember last year, I think you had a birthday wish you wanted to make then.
I did.
And I'm going to give you the opportunity, but I'm going to jump ahead of you because my wife's birthday is today. So, Corinne, happy birthday to you.
Davine, happy birthday. Her birthday is July 18th, and the last time that I did this little message, it took me a few takes, but I think I can get through this with one. My wife is, and I say this a lot of times, but my wife is my rock. She's done an incredible job. She has I have a tough job. She has a much tougher job with two little boys under the age of 3 years old. Thank you, honey, for all that you do, and happy birthday.
Yeah.
And I love you.
And ditto, because Bob's going to cut my throat. But the last one I want to put out there is Bob Dunbar, who's celebrating his birthday on Friday. So happy birthday to Bob. Okay, with all the birthday salutations in place and another great conversation down the tube, if you will, or whatever, I'm going to wish you all farewell for now, and until we meet again, take care.